Around the World Lit Audio. The Stranger by Albert Camus. Part 2, Chapter 1. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Part recap. Part 1 ended with Meursault in prison. He had been there for 11 months. He had adjusted, found the equilibrium available to a person in his circumstances. The magistrate had called him Monsieur Antichrist. His lawyer had found him difficult. Marie had stopped visiting. He had been himself throughout, at the funeral, at the beach, in the cell. He was about to discover what the world thought of exactly what he was. Part 2, Chapter 1. Part 2, Chapter 1. The trial began in summer. The courtroom was full. This surprised Meursault. He had not expected his trial to be a public event, had not thought about it in those terms, had thought of it as something between himself and the court, a process with a specific procedural purpose. But the room was packed with spectators, and the quality of their attention was the attention of an audience at an entertainment, and Meursault sat in the dock and looked at them looking at him, and felt, at first, a quality of unreality, the specific unreality of being the subject of attention you have not sought, and do not understand. The heat was tremendous. It was an Algerian summer, and the courtroom had the particular quality of an enclosed space in Algerian summer. Dense, airless, alive with the smell of people and the particular quality of light that comes through windows when the sun outside is operating at full capacity. His lawyer was there. The prosecutor was there. The jury was there. 12 men who had been selected for their capacity to make this judgment, and who sat with the particular expression of people who have agreed to discharge a serious responsibility. The judge opened the proceedings. He asked Meursault to identify himself. Meursault gave his name and his date of birth and his occupation. The judge reminded him that these were serious proceedings. Meursault understood this and said so. Then the witnesses were called. The director of the old people's home, where his mother had lived, came first. He testified about the funeral, about Meursault's behavior at the vigil, about his apparent composure, about the fact that he had not wept. He testified carefully, with the manner of someone who is reporting facts he found puzzling, and is allowing the court to draw its own conclusions. The prosecutor drew conclusions. He asked the director whether it was true that Meursault had not wept at his mother's funeral. The director said, "That is correct." The prosecutor asked whether it was true that Meursault had drunk coffee during the vigil. The director said, "Yes." He asked for it. "We provided it." The prosecutor asked whether it was true that Meursault had not looked at his mother's coffin. The director paused. He said, "I do not know if he looked at it or not. He did not ask to have it opened." This answer was received by the prosecutor with the expression of a man who has found a useful piece of evidence and intends to use it. Then the caretaker was called. He testified about the same things: the vigil, the coffee, the composure, the absence of visible grief. Then the next witness. Each witness was asked, in some form, the same question: did Meursault appear to grieve? Did he behave as a man whose mother had just died? Did he weep? Did he pray? Did he perform the expected rituals of mourning, in the expected way? The answer, consistently, was no. Meursault's lawyer rose to object. He pointed out that his client was being tried for murder, not for insufficient grief at a funeral. He asked the court to focus on the relevant events. The judge told him the two were connected. The prosecutor would be allowed to establish character. Meursault sat in the dock and listened to the construction of himself. He understood what was happening. He was not NAVE. 11 months in prison had given him time to think about his situation with considerable thoroughness. He understood that the trial was not primarily about the dead Arab on the beach. It was about what kind of person could shoot a man and what kind of person did not cry at his mother's funeral. It was about whether those two things were connected. It was about whether a man who did not cry at funerals was the same kind of man who could shoot someone, and whether that kind of man deserved to die. He watched the prosecutor build this argument with the professional admiration of someone who can recognize well-made work even when it is directed against them. Then Raymond was called. Raymond testified about the beach house, about the fight with the Arabs, about the sequence of events that had led to the confrontation at the spring. He was honest, more honest, perhaps, than was strictly strategic. He said that Meursault had had nothing against the Arabs personally. He said that the shooting was not premeditated. He said that Meursault had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, with a gun that was not his. The prosecutor asked Raymond whether Meursault had written a letter designed to humiliate and trap an Arab woman. Raymond said, "Yes." But the prosecutor said, "Thank you." Raymond sat down. Masson was called. He testified briefly. He had not been present at the shooting. Marie was called. She came into the courtroom wearing the same dress she had worn to the cinema on the day after the funeral. Meursault noticed this. He noticed her, as he always noticed her directness, her warmth, the specific quality of her presence in a room. She was asked about the day after the funeral. She said, "We went to the beach. We went to see a comedy film." He laughed. She said it simply, as a fact, without shame and without defense. She had been told by the lawyer to present it carefully, but she was not a woman who dissembled well, and the simplicity of her answer was the simplicity of honesty. The prosecutor asked, "You went to see a comedy the day after your companion's mother died?" Marie said, "Yes." He wanted to go. The prosecutor received this answer with great satisfaction. Then Meursault's lawyer spoke. He attempted to reframe, to present Meursault as a quiet, hard-working man, a decent employee, a person of no history of violence. He asked a colleague of Meursault's to testify to his good character. The colleague said, "He was a good worker. He did not make trouble." The prosecutor said, "He did not weep at his mother's funeral." The colleague said, "I did not attend the funeral." The day ended without a verdict. Meursault was taken back to his cell. He lay on his cot, and looked at the ceiling and thought about what he had seen. He thought about Mary's face, when she had been questioned, the particular quality of distress of a person, who is being asked to explain something that they did not, at the time, consider required explanation. He thought about Raymond's honest testimony and the prosecutor's careful interruption. He thought about the director of the home, the caretaker, the steady accumulation of small facts, that were each individually unremarkable and collectively devastating. He thought, "They are not trying me for what I did. They are trying me for who I am." He did not feel indignant about this. He felt, if anything, curious, the specific curiosity of a person watching a process that is entirely about them, from a perspective of almost complete detachment. He fell asleep. Outside, the Algerian summer continued its operations. Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Part 2, Chapter 1 of The Stranger, by Albert Camus. In Chapter 2, the trial continues. The prosecutor delivers his summation, a piece of rhetoric, that is, by any technical standard, brilliant, and that transforms Meursault's life into an argument for his death. And Meursault's lawyer attempts a defense. And the jury deliberates. And Camus brings everything he has been building since the first page to its conclusion, the conclusion that was always coming, that was there in the opening sentence, that the heat and the sun and the funeral and the beach, and the 5 shots were always pointing toward. Chapter 2 is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new chapter arrives every week.